On a crowded spring night in Columbus, Ohio, music spilled into the streets. Voices overlapped. Glasses clinked. Laughter bounced off brick walls. It was March 31st, 2006, and 27-year-old Brian Shaffer walked into a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Security cameras captured him entering. He was smiling, relaxed, alive. But here's what makes this case different from almost every other disappearance in modern American history. There is no footage of him leaving. Not from the main entrance, not from the side doors, not from anywhere. He walked in, and he was never seen again. This is the story of Brian Shaffer and the night that refuses to give answers. Brian Randall Shaffer was not a drifter. He wasn't unstable. He wasn't running from the law. He wasn't living on the edge. He was a second-year medical student at Ohio State University. Intelligent, ambitious, well-liked. Friends described him as funny, outgoing, thoughtful. He had recently lost his mother to cancer. That grief weighed heavily on him, but he was still moving forward. He had a girlfriend, Alexis. They were planning a trip to Miami. In just a few days, his life wasn't collapsing. It was progressing, which makes what happened next even harder to explain. That Friday night started casually. Brian went out with his friend, William Clint Florence. Later, they met Meredith Reed. The plan was simple: bar hopping, music, unwinding. At approximately 1:15 a.m., surveillance cameras captured Brian, Clint, and Meredith entering the Ugly Tuna Saloona. The bar was located inside a shopping complex called South Campus Gateway. Important detail. To enter the bar, you had to use escalators, and the entrance area was monitored by cameras. There were no known blind exits. Brian was seen on camera talking outside the bar entrance briefly with two women. He appeared relaxed, normal, not distressed. At 1:55 a.m., the cameras captured Clint and Meredith leaving. Brian did not appear with them. Clint later said he assumed Brian had gone home with someone. They tried calling him. No answer. By the next morning, Brian was gone. Police reviewed hours of surveillance footage. Every angle, every timestamp. They watched Brian enter. They watched the crowd leave at closing time. They never saw him walk out. Let that sit for a moment. This was not 1980. This was 2006. Digital cameras, clear timestamps. Security was tight. Investigators confirmed. There were service exits. But those exits triggered alarms. None were activated. If Brian left through the main escalator, he would have been recorded. But he wasn't. It is one of the most chilling elements of this case. A physical location, a recorded entry, no recorded exit. Almost like he vanished inside a sealed environment. Brian's phone didn't just stop answering. It changed. At first, it rang. Friends called. Family called. Clint called. Each time they waited for that familiar click, for his voice, for anything. But then something shifted. The ringing stopped. And suddenly, every call went straight to voicemail. No delay, no connection, just immediate silence. That small mechanical response felt final, like a door closing. Hours turned into days. Days became weeks. The world moved forward. But for Brian's father, Randy, time froze. He refused to accept what the silence seemed to suggest. While others whispered theories, Randy acted. He organized search parties. Volunteers gathered in parking lots at dawn. Flashlights cut through wooded trails. Boots pressed into riverbanks. They searched dumpsters, bridges, construction sites. They dragged portions of nearby rivers. They called his name into empty fields. Nothing. No trace. Flyers began appearing everywhere. Telephone poles, storefront windows, gas stations, a smiling photo, a height description, a number to call. Have you seen Brian? Question echoed across the city, but no one had. Then, months later, something happened. Something small. Something that shouldn't have happened. Randy dialed Brian's number again. He had done it hundreds of times before. Usually, it went straight to voicemail. But this time, it rang. Not once, but several times. Somewhere, a signal connected. Brian's girlfriend heard it too. For a brief, suspended moment, the impossible felt possible. Maybe the phone had been turned on. Maybe it had been charged. Maybe he was out there, alive, waiting. Then, the call dropped, disconnected. And when they tried again, voicemail, immediate, cold. Telecommunications experts later suggested it could have been a network anomaly, a delayed system ping, a tower glitch, a technical echo, something explainable, something ordinary. But for those few seconds, hope had returned. It rushed back in, uninvited and overwhelming. And then, it vanished. Again. Leaving the silence louder than ever. This is where the mystery deepens. Because after the searches, after the phone calls, after the surveillance review, what remained were theories. And every theory opened a door, only to reveal another wall. Theory 1, foul play inside the bar. It's the most immediate suspicion. Hundreds of people were inside that night. Music, alcohol, crowds, chaos. Arguments happen in places like that. Tempers flare. Accidents spiral. So investigators ask the obvious question. Did something happen? Inside? Was there a fight? A confrontation? A moment that escalated? But there was no sign of a struggle. No overturned furniture. No broken glass. No blood. No staff reported an incident. No patron remembered a scream. Security footage showed people entering. People leaving. Nothing unusual. Nothing violent. If something happened inside that bar, it left no physical trace. And in a crowded space like that, silence is suspicious, but it's also common. Theory 2, he left undetected. This theory shifts the focus. Maybe nothing dramatic happened. Maybe he simply walked out. But how? The escalators were covered by cameras. The main exits were visible. Service doors triggered alarms, and none were activated. Still, investigators considered possibilities. There was construction happening nearby. Temporary barriers. Restricted corridors. Could he have slipped into a blind spot? Walked alongside a crew? Used a staff-only hallway? Investigators say it's unlikely, but unlikely is not the same as impossible. And in cases like this, impossible things sometimes happen. Theory 3, he chose to disappear. This is the theory that divides people. Because on the surface, he had reasons to feel pressure. His mother had recently passed away. Medical school is relentless. Grief does strange things to the human mind. Some suggest he reached a breaking point, that he decided quietly and suddenly to walk away. Start over somewhere new. No explanation. No goodbye. But disappearing isn't simple. He left behind his savings, his ID, his car, and he never accessed his bank accounts again. Not once. Theory 4, an accident. This one feels both ordinary and terrifying. Construction zones surrounded parts of the complex. Open shafts. Unfinished areas. Could he have wandered into a restricted section? Fallen somewhere unseen? Search teams examined those possibilities. Nothing. No remains. No clothing. Again, nothing. And that's what makes this case so unsettling. Every theory sounds reasonable for a moment, until you follow it. And it collapses. Each explanation begins with logic and ends in silence. And that silence is where the mystery lives. When the surveillance footage ends, the mystery doesn't. It grows. The cameras at the entrance of the ugly Tuna Saloona captured what they were designed to capture. Movement. Time. Bodies entering. Bodies leaving. They documented noise, but they could not document absence. And that absence became the center of this case. After March 31st, 2006, investigators retraced every step. They replayed the footage repeatedly, frame by frame, second by second. They mapped the building, measured hallways, checked maintenance access points, reviewed construction layouts. They questioned friends again, then again. They examined phone records, bank activity, class attendance, computer usage. Nothing suggested preparation. Nothing suggested confrontation. Nothing suggested panic. Just nothing. And that nothing became louder than any evidence. Search teams expanded beyond the building. Nearby dumpsters were emptied and examined. Parking garages were checked. Rivers and surrounding terrain were searched extensively. K-9 units were deployed. Volunteers walked wooded areas. Posters covered campus walls. Local news stations aired updates. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Still, no confirmed sighting, no financial activity, no physical trace. For a brief moment, hope flickered. Months after the disappearance, Brian's phone rang. It didn't go straight to voicemail. It rang. His girlfriend heard it. That sound, that simple ring, reopened everything. But it ended as quickly as it began. Telecommunications experts later suggested it could have been a network glitch, a delayed signal, a phantom connection. But for those waiting, it felt like something more. And then, silence again. In 2008, tragedy struck the family once more. Brian's father, Randy, who had refused to stop searching, died in an accidental incident. He never received answers. That detail alone changes the emotional gravity of this case. Because now, people who pushed hardest for resolution are gone. Time moves forward. Memories fade. Witnesses relocate. Buildings change. Businesses close. But the footage remains frozen in 2006. A young man stepping onto an escalator, unaware that it would become the last confirmed image of him. This case unsettles people for a specific reason. It challenges something we believe is stable. We trust physical space. We trust surveillance. We trust that buildings have exits. We trust that if someone walks in, they must walk out. But here, that logic fails. And when logic fails, the mind starts filling gaps. Was it something simple? A hidden accident? A moment of misdirection? Or something far more deliberate? Every theory feels convincing, briefly, until you follow it completely, and it collapses under its own assumptions. Foul play should leave evidence. There was none. Escape requires opportunity. There was no clear path. A planned disappearance requires preparation. There was none. An accident leaves something behind. Nothing was found. So what remains? A timestamp, an escalator, a doorway, and a gap in recorded reality. The most unsettling part of the Brian Shaffer case is not what we know. It's what we don't. Because in most investigations, time reveals something. A witness, a confession, a mistake, a fragment. But here, time has only deepened the mystery. After the cameras stopped recording, the questions never did. And somewhere between those unanswered questions is where this story still lives. If you made it to the end, you're not here for noise. You're here for truth. This channel is built for people who want the full story, not just headlines. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and be here when the next investigation drops.